If your first job isn't perfect, that's okay. If your second job isn't perfect, that's okay. It's an experience. You learn from that. You start finding out more what you're looking for. It really comes down to, are you adding value? Are you able to add value to the company you're working for? And this comes back to the different jobs you have and what it is you like to do, learning from that and trying to identify what is the best opportunity for you. You will lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI. Somebody who's able to use those tools better than you. Read, listen, watch, just continue to learn. And that's going to keep you current, it's going to keep you relevant, and it's adding value. You're going to be able to add value better.
So good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So this is our very first podcast on our channel, which is FinStreet Education.
I'm honored.
Thank you. I'm so glad to partner up with you as our exclusive knowledge partners. I have personally used your study material to complete my studies for US CMA, and I'm 100% confident that it is going to be useful for other students as well. Now, starting with your journey back to India, I think now it's your second time in India.
Correct.
How's it going?
I love it. I have to say that I don't see a lot of India, but I see a lot of people. Okay. And the people that I get to meet and the people I talk with, and it's just a wonderful country. I've had a great time. I enjoy all the different cities. We've been to different cities on each trip, and so it's been a lot of people, which is wonderful, and a lot of learning.
That's amazing. Any favorite spot which you have picked as your go-to place in India?
Sometimes it's whatever place I'm in because that's the place that's most fresh, but this is my first time to Pune, and I love it. It's a much more open city, and I understand that has a lot to do with size of the city and things like that, but it has been a great joy just to drive around and see the different cities and the different lives that are there.
Okay, that's amazing. So today's podcast is quite special for our viewers. So Mr. Brian Hock has more than 25 years of industry experience as of today, and along with his corporate experience, his academic experience also as a cream layer or a cherry on the cake. Today we plan to dig in terms of how his career journey has spanned over time, and secondly, what kind of best study strategies, exam prep strategies we can pull out of him that would be widely beneficial for all CMA candidates. And lastly, we are also going to talk about the American dream. One of the questions I asked when any student I see in my class that why have you chosen US CMA? And one of the common answers lately I've been getting is I want to travel to US, UK or any part of the world. And this international certification has a better credibility and better acclamation worldwide. So what's the reality of American dream? Has Brian come across any Indian students flying off to US? Those kind of case study we'll definitely delve into. So starting right back at the beginning of your journey, back in 1989. Oh, that's quite a lot. I wasn't even born back then. When you chose your majors in terms of graduation, what was your thought process? Were you always into accounting or was it just luck by chance?
No, actually accounting was kind of a secondary plan for me. When I started at university, I was Russian history, diplomacy and foreign affairs, international studies, all of those related majors at different times. And so that was the original plan, was to study Russian history. I enjoyed teaching, obviously, and at that time I thought I'll become a Russian history professor.
Okay, that's interesting. But was there any some sort of vision or any level of guidance that, okay, if you take up along with your other majors, how did you segue into accounting then?
Well, a very simple reason. I wanted a job. I found out in talking to people that there's not a huge demand for Russian history professors, and so I would have gone to graduate school, I would have studied for many years, and then maybe not found a job. And so I decided that I wanted a little more certainty with my employment in the future. My father was an accounting professor for his professional career, and so I grew up with an accounting family. My older brother was a couple years ahead of me at university, and he was an accounting and finance major. And so after a few years at university in Russian history, I switched to accounting ended up with an accounting degree, started my career as an auditor, and have been in accounting ever since.
That's interesting. So a similar trend we do observe in India as well, that most of the chartered accountants encourage their kids to get into this stream. Coming to your kids, would you pass on the same advice?
No, I don't think I would pass on the advice to do exactly what I did. If that is what they enjoyed, I would encourage them to go into accounting or teaching. But I don't think I would say specifically that accounting is the career option that they should follow, which is a good thing because I have 3 children, and at this point only one is involved. One is interested in a business type of career.
Okay, interesting. Coming to your PwC chapter, how was your experience as a candidate at the firm, and how it built your vision for your career ahead?
Well, my time with PwC, actually at that time it was Price Waterhouse. It wasn't PwC yet, but I had kind of a unique experience in that I graduated from university and immediately went and worked overseas. I was posted to Russia immediately. I spent a few months kind of in training. But I went to PW in Russia a few months after I graduated from university. And so not only was I adjusting to professional life, I was also adjusting to living in another country and all of the experience and the process. Price Waterhouse at that time was really opening the office where I was. We had one large client, and so it was a lot of changes at the same time. But it was really the experience with PW that ended up putting me into training.
Okay.
And I'll go ahead and answer that question. I went there as an auditor. I chose that option to start my career with because I thought there would be the least amount of auditing. I thought it would be more in a consulting tone. And I learned fairly quickly that auditing is not my favorite way to spend my career. Okay. But with PW, even though I wasn't involved in auditing, I got involved in the training department at PW, and I've been in training ever since.
Okay. Now, I do recall one of the points you mentioned in yesterday's speech, that auditing is not that fun maybe, but as a manager, you might enjoy. Now, what majorly happening in India is when Big 4 or Big 6 firms are set up, majority of the roles offered even today are into auditing, or even where I was working, it was into due diligence, similar to auditing.
Right.
I didn't enjoy my role either. But is there any sweet spot, or is there anything a candidate misses out, let's say if he takes an immediate switch or doesn't plan to build up in this vertical?
Well, any position is a good position. Any position gives experience. And one of the advantages of an experience as an auditor, whether it's a Big 4 or a slightly smaller firm, is you get a lot of experience in different industries. Your clients are hopefully in different industries. You get exposed to different sized companies that have different cultures. And so all of that experience is able to be used, if you pay attention to it, you're able to use that as you decide what you want to do next. And it may be that you want to stay as an auditor, or as a tax professional, or due diligence, or consulting. It's a great career. But if you decide that that's not what you want to do for the next 30 or 40 years of your life, all of those experiences with companies, with individuals, with managers, different leadership styles, all help you identify what will be the best next step for you. And it's something too, in today's world, we know that most people are going to have multiple jobs. And I say, if your first job isn't perfect, that's okay. If your second job isn't perfect, that's okay. It's an experience. You learn from that. You start finding out more what you're looking for. And a little bit of patience is required. We all want to have our favorite job right away when we finish university, but realistically, that's not going to happen. We just have to learn and slowly find that job.
Okay. Drilling down on the same point, because I preferably want to bridge my gap in terms of experience. I just come in with 5 years of experience versus 25. So an attempt to bridge this gap of 2 decades. What would a career in a SME vertical, becoming a subject matter expert, versus a general candidate who's jumping around different profiles, based on your experience, what would be a better one?
The answer to that question is both are acceptable. And a concept that I've talked a lot about in different situations and with different groups, it really comes down to, are you adding value? Are you able to add value to the company you're working for or the company you want to work for? And in some situations, that may require a deep specialty. If I have a tax question, I want the person who answers my tax question to be a tax specialist. I don't want them to remember back when they took an exam 5 years ago what the tax law was. But also, at the same time, as you go up in an organization, the higher you are in an organization, the further into the future your role requires you to look. And you also have to understand how the company as a whole operates. And so it's kind of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other, in that specialty is required for some areas, but also a general knowledge is required of others. And so it's something that you need to see where you're going. It's something, if you take cybersecurity, obviously a huge issue, and that requires a deep specialization. I don't want my cybersecurity person to do it a couple hours a week among all of the other jobs. And this comes back to the different jobs you have and what it is you like to do, learning from that and trying to identify what is the best opportunity for you, whether it's something where it is a specialist, or do you want to be a general consultant, somebody who's going to provide advice, somebody who's going to help manage a company.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't answer the question, but
Yeah.
it depends on what you want to do.
Okay, maybe more context and role based. Okay. Coming to now your switch from your corporate experience to ATC International, how did that happen?
That was, I was working as the training manager for Price Waterhouse in Russia, and essentially I moved to their training provider. ATC was providing all of the ACCA training for the Big Four or the Big Six, whatever number it was back at that time. And so I went to manage ATC in Russia, to do some teaching, but to kind of lead that overall delivery of the training process. Essentially, I switched sides of the table. With PW, I was purchasing, and at the other side, I was delivering and providing all of that training.
Okay, interesting. So ATC was a prep provider back then. Okay. What led you to think that instead of teaching with ATC throughout the time, let me start my own class and even a publication?
Yeah. Well, that I was with ATC. I then left ATC and went to Arthur Andersen as their training manager for Russia and part of Eastern Europe. And the reason I started my own company was a financial one, really. Arthur Andersen wanted to have CPA training for some of their staff. The option that was available in Moscow at that time was very expensive. And I started thinking, well, I can do that CPA training for less than this price. And so I left Arthur Andersen as the training manager and essentially started teaching CPA initially, and then soon after that we started doing CMA classes because there was an opportunity in the market. The provider that was there was too expensive and provided an opportunity for somebody to come in at a lower price. And this is just free markets in terms of supply and demand and what is there. And so I took that opportunity, and 25 years later, still going on from that.
Oh, that's nice. So when I got into teaching, I also joined an institution based out of Hyderabad. One major concern I faced over there was having complete freedom to yourself in terms of how you want to conduct classes, in terms of time constraint, because end of the day, every minute I teach was a cost to the company. So getting a free hand in terms of experimenting with my approaches of teaching, because I strongly feel that whatever approach is being followed right now in our market, it's not kept up with time, or I haven't updated yet with time. So that was my initial push of getting in. But yeah, the financial one is an interesting insight. Okay. So going back to the digital accounting changes scene, you started your career somewhere around in 90s, and now we are in 2025. So what all changes in terms of accounting practices you have seen, maybe from going from let's say pen and paper to maybe digital and now advanced?
Obviously, the changes are huge. When I was an intern and as an auditor, it was a calculator. It wasn't even Excel yet. It was still, you added up all the columns by hand and you wrote them down, and it was all paper and pencil and pen. But I think it's important to keep in mind that even as we've shifted from that in a very short period of time to all of the online tools and all of the data that we capture and all of those questions, I think what we're doing as an accountant and what we're doing as an auditor is fundamentally the same thing. We have to account for the transactions of the company. As an auditor, we have to come in and make certain that the financial statements are fairly stated. And that hasn't changed. The way we do that in terms of how we record the journal entries, how we audit the journal entries, how we audit the balances on the company's financial statements, how we do it has changed, and the tools that we have to do it have changed. But it's still a question of this is the transaction, it has to be recorded. Now, the transactions may become more complicated, there may be more foreign currency risks and transactions involved, but fundamentally what a business does hasn't changed. And what the auditor is supposed to do hasn't changed. The tools we have available, the tools we use, the tools we're going to use, I was going to say 5 years, but 5 months from now, may be different. But it's important to keep in mind, fundamentally, we're still doing the same thing as we did 100 years ago in accounting and auditing.
Okay. But let's say if we had to evaluate in terms of efficiency or in terms of changes, any specific milestones have you observed over time, let's say from Excel to any other?
Well, I think there's Excel is a big one, and in terms not only of Excel, but going from the initial stage of Excel, where it was kind of a fancy calculator, to all of the tools and resources that are available, the things that you can do in Excel now. And if we look even at things that are happening now with AI and ChatGPT and all the different names that come, are new names each week, those are new tools that we need to know how to use. And if we don't know how to use them, we're not going to be able to add value to any organization. And I think back when I was applying for a job, I put on my CV that I knew Word and Excel, which was kind of new. I mean, I remember when I was in university, this was just starting to have computers. It was a dial-up modem, but we needed to learn that. And if you go to a job now and you don't know how to use Excel, you don't know how to use a word processor, clearly you're not going to get the job. And so those tools that we're using, we need to know how to use them. And I know this is a common question people ask is, am I going to lose my job to AI? And I think in most cases the answer is no, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI, somebody who's able to use those tools better than you. And so just like accountants had to make a transition, even if you go back before Excel, to computers. And I remember when word processors started, there was an idea that all secretaries were going to lose their job. That didn't happen. And I guess part of that fallacy was everybody thought that the reason senior executives didn't type letters and memos was because they didn't want to use a typewriter. That wasn't the case. And so if we don't learn the new tools, we are going to fall behind. We are going to lose our job. We are not going to be able to add value to the organization. And so for all the new generation studying at university, graduating from university, it's a constant learning process to be able to use the tools that are available to add value wherever it is that we're working.
It makes me think that maybe I should even introduce a course on ChatGPT with Excel.
Yes. The issue with that, though, is even if you teach that course today, how long will what you taught today still be
relevant,
what it is that people are using? And I subscribe to different podcasts and emails, and so even if you just look at in the subject of what these emails are every day, the summary of AI, terms come and terms go. And there's a new idea and it catches on or it doesn't. And so the challenge of doing anything that is AI related is it has a very short shelf life.
That's true. Okay, coming to, rather going back to your early days of Hock. How was day zero at your company? Any challenges you faced?
Well, it was a lot of teaching. Back then we didn't have videos, and so every class had to be taught individually and separately. And so I did a lot of teaching of CPA, CMA, CIA. I enjoyed it. I love teaching, and it's something that we lose as teachers now when it's on Zoom or when it's recorded. When you're in front of the students, when you're in front of the class, you can see, do they understand it? Do they not understand it? Do you need to do something again? Do you need to go over something again or not? But when you're on Zoom, you may not see the faces. When you're recording a video and there is no audience. It's something where obviously I have a lot of years of experience, and so I know what people understand and don't understand and how to present it. But without that feedback that you get in the classroom, it's very hard to know as a teacher whether or not you're on point and whether or not you've helped them learn. And so at that point, it was when I started writing the materials, and that's kind of still the foundation of what we do today. We wrote slightly different materials because at that time in the year 2000 in Russia, there weren't a lot of graduates with very strong accounting educations. At that time, the CPA exam still covered US audit, US taxation, US GAAP. And so traditionally, it's been a CPA review course or a CMA review course where all we're doing is helping the candidates remember what they already learned. When I was teaching my classes in Russia, there was no foundation to draw on. They hadn't studied U.S. pension accounting. They hadn't had an individual tax course at university. And so I had to do more teaching. And I explain it I started one step earlier in the process. Instead of just reminding somebody how you do pension accounting, we would go through what is pension accounting. And it's something that I believe very strongly that if you understand the reason that you're calculating the formula, the reason that you're doing the journal entry, the reason that we're looking at whatever it is we're looking at, it's so much easier to actually learn it instead of just memorizing the formula. If we know why we calculate the ratio, what it's telling us, what we need to do if it's a bad ratio, what the company's, if we have that foundation of understanding, it makes the exam a lot easier because those questions on the exam that are new, you actually have the tools to deal with that. But also in work, you get unique situations all the time. And if your exam preparation was to memorize the formula, to memorize the list of 5 key terms, you don't have the tools to apply to different situations, to apply to new situations. And so from a writing standpoint at that time, I was writing all of this content in terms of kind of one step earlier in the process. And we still have all of that in our material today, which is one of the things that I think makes us unique, is that it's more of a teaching process than simply a review and remember what it is you learned at some point in the past.
Okay. Interesting. Just going to the student perspective of things. So in India, what happens is at a graduation level, let's talk about mainly 2 or 3 courses which we take up in commerce, which is Bachelor's of Commerce, Bachelor's of Business Administration with Finance, and let's say any other relevant course. We or our government, when they kind of design the course, it has to be inclusive enough to include tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 city students as well, which kind of results in a curriculum which is extremely simplified and not that relevant or advanced to a level where corporate companies expect them to be. And that kind of pulls students into this professional exam circle. Going to US, what's main motive of students getting into the CMA and CPA side of things?
In terms of how do they go to the US or?
No. What's the, so let's say a student studying in US completes his high school and along with graduation maybe plans to pursue CMA. What's his motivation?
In the US, pursuing CMA is generally not done during university years. Some students in accounting will start their CPA studies because that's kind of the culture in the US, that everybody out of an accounting degree goes into CPA. But most of the professional certifications and even some candidates with CPA start pursuing that after the graduation, where they've had a couple of years of experience. And it's a matter of, at that point, they recognize, well, if I want to get promoted, if I want to make my resume different than everybody else's, we need to have that additional knowledge and skills. And also it's important to keep in mind that one of the requirements of a professional certification is the continuing education. And so this isn't a, you take the exams and you're done. Because when I took the CPA exam many, many years ago, and when I took the CMA exam, we didn't have technology issues like we have today. We didn't have the data analytics wasn't covered. And so part of that benefit of a professional certification isn't the initial learning, but the requirement that you continue to take these continuing education classes so that what you learned stays current. And this gets back to what I said in terms of with AI and ChatGPT. If you don't know how to use these tools, it's going to be a challenge. Similarly, as the profession develops, as transactions change, international business changes, we need to be aware of what it is that's happening, and that's the long-term benefit that a professional certification provides.
So yeah, this I can resonate with working professionals who do consider pursuing CMA and CPA. And one common question they ask me, which I'm now going to pass on to you, is Aditya, should we take a break and go for an MBA, or rather continue working and pursue CPA or CMA? What would be your take on that?
I think working is always good. And so if you have an option between a job and studying, especially earlier in your career, if it's a job that has value, that's going to help you learn, having a job is clearly important. You can go back for an MBA later, you can go back for a professional certification a little bit later. You can also do those while you're working. But it's important to remember that what we're ultimately trying to do is build out a long-term career. And if I'm at university and I graduate university and I've already passed CMA, excellent. That is a tremendously good start, a great investment, best thing you could have done. But at that point, when we start talking about a second certification, I don't think we're ready for a second certification yet, because that second certification needs to be one that will add value to you. And so if a candidate sits there, they've graduated university, they have a job, they've passed CMA, and they say, I'm going to get another certification. And there's a lot to choose from. At that point in your work life, you don't know what specialty you're going to be in 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And so you run the risk that you invest a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of nerves into studying a second certification that turns out not to be the certification that you need. And so an example, let's say you go to work and you're working for the company, and after 2 years you end up deciding you want to be an internal auditor. Well, if you're an internal auditor, the certification you need is certified internal auditor. When you just started, you may not have had any idea that's what you were going to go into, and so your second certification wouldn't have been CIA. It would have been something else that may not really match with what you're doing. And so once you have that first certification, work hard, learn as much as you can, learn all the skills you can, talk to people, and start to decide what direction your work is going to go. Is it going to go into an accounting direction? Is it going to go into a finance direction? Is it going to go into an international business? Is it going to go into more of a consulting role? And when you know more about what that next stage is in your work life, then you'll know what certification it is that you should pursue as a second certification, and whether or not an MBA would be worth it or not. And so I know that people want to keep learning and they want to keep getting certifications, but at some point we just need to kind of slow down, take a breath, be patient, get that work experience so we know better what direction we're going to go into, so that second certification is a value-adding certification to the future of our career.
So bottom line, certification wins.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that we are comparing courses, let's take it a bit further. So, like a legacy old question: CMA versus CPA versus other certifications. Let's say as a student who's just stepping out of college, and maybe I'm giving myself an year or two to learn a bit further in terms of professional certifications, and then maybe consider tapping into the job market. So under this scenario, what should be my go-to certification?
And any time you're pursuing a certification, it needs to be with an eye to the future, because it's going to take you a couple years to pass the exams, to do the studying. And so we don't want to be in a situation where by the time we get a certification, it doesn't add value anymore. And so we need to think about what certification is going to be relevant a couple years from now. One of the reasons that I like CMA as a first certification is it opens so many doors. so many opportunities build off of what you learn in CMA. An accounting direction, a finance direction, a consulting direction. I think CMA is excellent for consultants because it teaches what a company should do. And if you're going to be a consultant and you're going to go tell a company how to improve, you should have a sense of what they should be doing. And so many opportunities are based off of what is taught in CMA that I think it's a very good first certification. Also, it is certainly not an easy exam. I don't want to imply that it is an easy exam, but it is 2 exams. And so it's something that realistically a person who's committed is going to be able to pass in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. Other certification programs that are much longer, it's a longer term commitment, and it takes longer to get to the end of that. You're further along in your career. So CMA is a very good, strong first certification. And as I said, after you start your job, whether you end up in accounting or finance or consulting or internal audit, you're then able to get that second certification that's going to add value to that part of your career.
Okay. But I'm pushing it a bit in the sense, would you like to add one more point on the process of finding the right certification?
Finding the right certification.
Yeah.
It first requires you to have a sense of what you want to do.
Okay.
And if it's something where you say, my goal is to get a job as an auditor in the Big Four. Okay, great. That's fine. What is the certification that they're looking for? And that may be CPA. Okay. If you're looking to get a job in industry, if you're looking to go abroad, you need to combine what are those requirements in the field you want to go to. And also, with any certification, I touched on this with CMA, it's a question of how realistic is it that you will finish? Because it's one thing to say, I am a certified CMA, and it's another thing to say, I'm in the process of studying CFA. Because I'm in the process means we don't know what it means. I thought maybe I should study CFA. Does that count that I'm in process? Mm-hmm. So to start a certification path without looking to see, is this something realistically I can finish? So if you're talking about ACCA or CMA or Indian CMA and CA, it's a long process, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But if you say my goal is to get a job and try to find a job in a multinational and be overseas in 3 years, okay, if that's your goal, is a 5-year certification program going to help you do that? Every candidate has a slightly different perspective on what they want to do, what they think their career is going to go to, and that changes as you go through your career. But it's a question of what is going to allow me to do what it is I want to do. CMA may not be your final certification. 2 exams, you can complete it while you're at university, you can graduate with CMA completed, you need to work your experience. That's a tremendous start to your career. Even if you decide that in 2 years I'm going to get another certification. And so I still haven't answered the question what certification somebody should get, but it really comes down to what it is that person wants to do. In the past, I don't have the opportunity to do it as much anymore. But if I'm talking to somebody and they approach us and they say, I want to buy whatever materials, I ask the question, what are you doing? What is your objective with this? And I want to make certain that at least it makes sense that this certification is going to help them do what they want to do. I have no great interest in helping somebody study something that's not going to work for them. And what happens is if you're studying a certification that doesn't match up with what you want to do, it becomes very difficult to pass because you realize you're studying things you're not going to use. You're studying things that you don't like. And once you're studying something that doesn't interest you very much, it's very easy to find other things to do other than study. And so making certain that it's the right exam before you start studying is important, which may also mean that for some candidates, right now may not be the best time to start studying. I'm going to get married in 3 months. I'm planning to move to another city in 2 months. Well, don't start. You're not going to be focused on it. It's not going to be a priority. And again, this comes back to this idea that sometimes we need to wait. We just need to pause, let things develop a little bit, find out a little bit more what opportunities are in the company, what the different paths are, and then we're able to make a decision that will help us the most through that journey.
Well, interesting. Coming to your advice for US CMA candidates now. When a student approaches you saying that, hi Brian, I've decided to pursue US CMA, I want to complete it, let's say, okay, that's another advice. Should I target to complete it in 6 months, 9 months, 1 year? What should be my approach? And secondly, how should I go about studying it?
In terms of how long you should plan on studying, it really comes down to a reality check with yourself. It's going to take 200 hours self-study, okay. 250, 300 hours. You have to be realistic about how much you can study in a week. And so if somebody comes to me and says, I work a full-time job, I'm married, I have 3 children, I'm able to study 2 hours a week, and I'm going to pass in 6 months. I say, no, you're not. There's an amount of time that is required. And so it's important to be realistic about that at the beginning in terms of what that time frame is. Yes, if you're able to study 15, 20 hours a week, then a few months may be more than enough time to prepare, and passing CMA in 6 months might be realistic. If you're studying 5 hours a week, it's a math question. Okay. And I know that when we calculate for our materials how long somebody should study a study unit or a topic, we actually use math, and we say there's X number of pages in the textbook you need to read, and so we say that'll take 4 minutes a page, 5 minutes, I don't know what we use, and there's 20 multiple choice questions, so that's going to take 45 minutes, and there's this amount of videos. There's an amount of time it takes just to read a book and to answer questions. And so that realistic number is important. If you don't make a realistic budget at the beginning in terms of time, you get frustrated, you fall behind, and you give up. And so in terms of the question, how long should I study? Well, you take 250 divided by the number of hours per week you can study, and that's how long it's going to take you to prepare for an exam. In terms of when somebody should study or the approach to that, in all the years I've learned that there's one question that a candidate needs to be able to answer correctly. And if they can answer this one question correctly, they'll pass. If they can't answer this one question correctly, then they shouldn't start because they're going to fail. And I've written about this and there's videos about this, but that one question is very simple. Why are you studying? Why are you trying to study and pass CMA or ACCA or whatever certification? And if the person answers this question correctly, they'll pass. If they can't answer it correctly, they won't. And the reason is very simple. You know from experience that you don't accidentally pass an exam. You have to study, you have to read, you have to do the questions, you have to review. If you know why you're studying, you will do that. You know from experience, I know from experience that while you're studying, you may not watch as many sports events on TV as you like to. You may not spend as much time with your friends as you like to. You may not spend as much time on your hobbies as you like to. And if you know why you're studying, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to tell your friends, hey, look, I'd like to, but this is my study time today. I'm going to stay and study. So I said you have to answer this question correctly. So what's the correct answer to the question? Anything. Whatever the reason is for you. And I know that for most candidates, the correct answer is some form of money. I want a promotion, I want a different job, I want a better job, I want a bonus, I want more career. And that's a tremendously correct answer, because that money, that compensation we get from working is why we go to work. We may love our job, but if they stop paying us, I think we're going to stop showing up fairly quickly. And so a candidate needs to understand why they're doing it. And if the answer, you ask somebody, why are you studying? Well, I think it might be good for my career. My friends are doing it, and I decided I should probably. It seems like I want to learn something more. Don't start, because you're not going to make the sacrifice that you need to in order to pass the exam. And sometimes I say, well, I wouldn't recommend you start right now. Go to work, spend some time, find out what what's for your career, and when you do know why you're going to do it, that promotion, the money, the bonus, whatever the case may be, that's when you start studying, but not before. So know why you're doing it and be realistic about how long it's going to take you.
Okay. So first part, I'm crystal clear in terms of setting up the duration and realistic expectations. But one thing my students push me to do is give them a formula. So how I would advise them is that at least go through 3 readings of Hock textbooks. After that, at least watch the videos, if required twice, but at least once. Because maybe a video watching it third time might not give you that much return,
Right.
which first time would give. And then go through the question bank at least thrice again, but make sure that you are highlighting questions which you are getting incorrect. So while repeating practice, you only visit those. Any such formula that you maybe based on your insights from LMS or students, built upon which students can follow?
Every student studies a little differently. Some prefer to read, some prefer to watch, and so you have to take that into account as to what works best for you. I think it's important. I'm not going to directly answer your question initially, but I will. I think it's important that candidates create a study schedule when they're going to study each week. It's going to be Monday evening, Tuesday morning, Thursday evening, whatever time, and that goes into your calendar. That's an important event, that's an important meeting. And the reason that you need a schedule for when you're going to study, and let's pretend you make a schedule that's 15 hours a week. 3 hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday evening, whatever the case may be. The reason you need to have a study schedule is not for those 15 hours a week that you're studying. It's for all of the other hours. Because once you make a decision to study a professional certification, you no longer have free time. Every day when you wake up, you could study.
Yes.
Every day when you come home from classes or work, you could study. Every night before you go to bed, you could study before you go to bed. So it's always with you. You always could be studying. And that just becomes a stress. It's always on your mind. You're always thinking, I should be studying. But if you make a schedule and you say, I'm going to study these times, then those times you're not supposed to study, you can enjoy. You can say, oh, it's Saturday, I'm not studying today. It's Tuesday, I'm not studying today. I am going to go, I'm going to spend time with my children, I'm going to spend time with my spouse, I'm going to go out with my friends and relax about it. Because you know in your schedule you have the time you need for studying. This isn't that time. I'm going to relax, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to not think about studying because I've already taken care of it. This is very similar to a financial budget for you as a person. When you have your money and you know this is my income and these are all the expenses, this is what I can do whatever I want with. You're able to spend that money more enjoyably because you know that's what it's for. When you set up a time schedule, you'd say, I'm studying today, but tomorrow I'm not going to think about it. And so have that study schedule. And yes, it is important that candidates are realistic about what they know and what they don't know. And so what that means is as you're going through the questions, one of the tools that is a good tool is to understand why the incorrect answer is incorrect. We know what we did. Sometimes we kind of guessed. We may have thought, well, it seems like this is what we should do. But if you understand why the incorrect answer is incorrect, in a sense, you're preparing for multiple questions. Because maybe in a different form of this question, they give you information you don't need, or they don't give you information. And so when you understand why the incorrect answer is incorrect, it really helps your own understanding. And it's also something where if you really want to know if you understand something, try teaching somebody else. And so knowing why those incorrect answers are incorrect is all part of being able to teach somebody else. Know why this is the way we do it and why we don't do it this way, why we don't include that number, why we don't include that information is just as important sometimes as knowing how the correct answer was calculated. Okay. So pay attention to the incorrect answer explanations.
Cool. So along with the diplomatic answer, we do have the secret formula, guys. We have just edited out.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay. Coming to last two but super important questions. So again, as I've mentioned, many students plan to go overseas in terms of education. Uh, have you come across, and rather first question they ask is, Aditya, I'm pursuing US CMA, I'll complete it. Maybe I'll take couple of years of experience as well. But then how do I switch to US? Should I just go out, apply, connect, network? One advice that I usually give is chapters do help. So get in touch with IMA chapters in US, councils, there are councils over there. But from your perspective, let's say student wants to take that move, how should he go about it?
The chapters is a very good one, and also being involved in whatever professional organization you're in, the local chapter. Because if you've just graduated from university, and even if you've passed CMA, and you want to get a job in the US, ask yourself the question, why should they hire me? What do I know? What skills do I have that an accounting graduate in the US does not have? So why would a company choose to make the investment in bringing me a visa, all of the support that's required to a new country? Why me? And if you've just graduated from university, the answer is there's really not a reason why a company in another country would hire you. So what you need to do is make decisions about your career, make decisions about the job, make decisions about what you do based on the fact that you want to get a job in the US, if that's the country you want to go to. Which means when you interview for jobs with companies that are either US companies or companies that have operations in the US. Keep in mind that it's not going to happen immediately, but if you are involved in the professional organization, you connect yourself with companies that have operations in the US, you learn the skills, you stay current with the skills, then in a couple of years it may be that that company says, you know, our operations in India have expanded, we need to build out a staff in headquarters that is able to connect and to do that. And at that point, you've told them you're interested in working in the US, you've gained skills, you know the company, and you are adding value. You do have something to add. So it's a matter of putting yourself, doing the things now to be in the position that when that position opens in the US, you are able to say, I'm here, I have the skills, I have something that can add value. And again, this comes back to being patient. To expect to get a job overseas immediately after graduation is unlikely. It really is. But if you build the relationships, the chapter, if you go to the IMA chapter, those people there work for multinationals. They deal with that all the time. And if you talk and you say, hey, this is the job I have, these are the skills I'm learning, I'm really interested in a job that would put me in the US, in Europe, whatever country, plant that seed with them, build that relationship with them, stay in contact with them, and who knows, these senior people that go to the chapter events, they're the ones that are doing the hiring. They're the ones that are aware of the opportunities in other countries and other companies. And so you don't get a job in another country accidentally. You have to be intentional about what you do, the jobs you take, the people you create relationships with, the people you network with, to put yourself in that position to 2 years, 3 years down the line, be the one that adds value and gets that job.
So your answer actually recalls me a success story I recently heard. There was a candidate who completed US CMA working in a IT firm in the finance department, switched out, started working as a freelance finance executive or associate for a US company. And she was working around at $1,000 per month range. 2 years down the line, she built relationship, her credibility was up, and they invited her to US. And that transition was amazing. I mean, she comes from a very humble background, and then making it there, it was a big deal for her. So makes sense.
Well, and that's the being patient.
Yes.
You know, you have to have the skills, you have to have whatever it is that adds value that would cause a company to want to help you move halfway around the world to work.
Amazing. Adding just one more question in our discussion, management accountants in general, to what extent are they different from just accountants? And another trend I have seen today, we have Ronak with us as well, who has switched into multiple careers. So in general, if we had to talk about scope in few sentences, how would you define the scope of a CMA?
Well, I think CMA has a very broad scope because it covers, we say accounting and finance. Another way to look at it is it covers the decisions a company makes. And so companies have budgets and companies have investment decisions and companies make decisions about what type of financing they're going to get. Are they going to issue debt? Are they going to get a bank loan? How do they structure the loan? Internal controls have to be there. And so what CMA is presenting is how a business operates. And one of the ways I explain it is that if you work at a company and you're studying CMA, everything that's in CMA, your company either does or should be doing. I know some small companies don't necessarily have all the internal controls that a larger company has, but they should. And so what CMA is equipping you with is to be a management accountant, which is involved in getting the numbers for people to make decisions. What is the cost of this? What is the cost of that? Financial accounting, recording the transactions, preparing the financial statements, that internal finance, any money-related function within the organization. And also, you mentioned IT. CMA is a very good knowledge base for any manager who is responsible for a budget and is involved in areas outside of their budget. If you're HR, if you're in marketing, if you're in IT, having an understanding of how your unit of the business fits into the larger business is important. That's what allows you to participate in management meetings actively. It allows you to understand what's happening with the company. And it also allows you to add value to the company if you're understanding how your department, how what you do fits in with the rest of the company. We talk about enterprise risk management, where instead of each department assessing its risks individually, we look at the company as a whole. Well, if we're talking about decision making, either every department can make decisions entirely by itself, or we need to have enterprise decision making, where those decisions are being made aware of, if we do this, this is what's going to happen somewhere else. And even just simple things like when we talk about how salespeople go out and sell something and then tell the production department to make it. Well, if you sell something that you actually are not able to make, you're not doing yourself any favors. And so the salespeople need to know, what is it that we're able to produce? What are the things that we're actually able to sell? What are the features we can change or add? And the same thing with money in a company. How does that money work? How does it flow in and out of the organization? The more you understand that, even if you're not in accounting or finance, the more value you add. And this goes back to what I said before, that CMA is a tremendous foundation. Accounting, finance, operations, budgeting, any specific department, having that skill set is valuable and helps you perform your job better, and, say it one more time, adds value to the company by you knowing how the whole company operates.
Okay, that's a spot-on advice and very well defined actually. Coming to last question of our podcast, any advice you would like to share with our viewers, general viewers? My viewers range mainly between, let's say, 16 years of age to even 40, 45.
Yeah.
And not just career, in terms of life, your learnings, your lessons, which helped you.
I think is to continue to learn. It's something that there's so many ways now that we can learn, whether it's podcasts or YouTube videos or books, if people still read books and magazines and newspapers. Continue to be curious, continue to ask questions, and continue to learn. It's something that, even if it's not part of what you do on a daily basis at work, be aware of what's happening in the world. Be aware of what's happening in the world of business. Be aware of what's going on around you, and continue to learn. We learn so fast these days. There's so much information that's available all the time that there's a phrase I like. It was leaders are readers. And now I understand there's more than just reading. But if you want to lead, if you want to be somebody that's able to move a company forward, you need to know what's going on. And so continuously learn, talk to new people, Go to the IMA chapter events. I was talking to a university yesterday. Those events are the opportunities to meet people that are in different industries, different positions, with different backgrounds. And all of those experiences you slowly accumulate, and that becomes what you are. It's something that, when you graduate and you're trying to get a job, they want to hire somebody with experience. Well, you just graduated, you don't have experience. How do you get experience when it's a requirement? And I say, if you learn and you talk to people and you read and you listen, you can get some of that experience by learning from other people. And so read, listen, watch, just continue to learn. And that's going to keep you current, it's going to keep you relevant, and it's adding value. You're going to be able to add value better.
Okay, that's helpful. So this brings us to end of our first podcast, and I have to say, one of the most, I would say, satisfying and insightful podcasts I've had till date. Brian has been a leader in US CMA industry for quite some time, and I think that has reflected very well into this podcast. Going back to referencing the chapter or why students should visit chapter, lately an interesting trend I've seen is that people have kind of started asking each other out when they meet at a chapter event. So you never know, in what way these meetings, these networking events will help you. But yeah, I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed this podcast. If you are a US CMA candidate, please do take this advice to your heart. This will definitely help you. This is something I have closely resonated with during my prep days. And all the best for your exams. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.